将来临的表演模仿 APIDA 设计的五花八门、丰富多彩的文化和身份，比如年龄、国籍、性别、精神疾病、LGBTQ+、身体多样性，还有老江等，我们都独一无二。
I thought there was no way out. Yeah, I used to be scared of the light, and I was swallowed by doubt. I'd forgotten what freedom was like. Puzzle pieces on the floor, they don't fit it anymore. I'm changing, I'm changing. When they ask you who I am, what I've done and where I've been, there's one thing I want you to say. Tell them I'm brave, see it on my face. I am bigger than anything coming my way. It's a new day, now I'm not afraid. So if anyone asks you how I overcame, you can tell them I'm brave. Some days I come out on top, and some days I can't catch a break. But when the fire don't stop, I won't wish my troubles away. I've been down and I've been out, but if you look at me now, I'm blooming, I'm moving into better, brighter days. Yeah, this hope is here to stay. There's only one thing you can say. Tell them I'm brave, see it on my face.
Where am I from? I am from This Is My Brave, based in Northern Virginia, lands inhabited by the Paladin for at least 12,000 years. Where am I really from? Oh, I'm from the Jersey Shore. No, that wasn't what you were asking. Oh, where's my family from? Well, in 1875, the Page Act banned Chinese women from entering the United States because they were perceived to be prostitutes. In 1879, the 15-passenger bill limited ships from carrying more than 15 Chinese passengers in each trip to the U.S. In 1880, the Angel Treaty only allowed white-collar professionals from China to enter the U.S. In 1882, the Chinese Exclusion Act is the first and only law to ban a whole ethnic or national group from entering the U.S. In 1892, the Geary Act required existing Chinese residents in the U.S. to carry a resident permit or else be deported or serve a year of hard labor. Chinese residents also were not eligible for bail and could not serve as a witness in court. In 1943, the Magnuson Act allowed 105 Chinese people to enter the U.S. each year. In 1952, the Immigration and Nationality Act abolished direct racial barriers, and in 1965 abolished the national origins formula of immigration quotas. That's when my family was able to immigrate to the U.S. So where are you from? America? You don't look Native American. So where are you really from?
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Brown, and this is my submission to This Is My Brave. I am a proud hybrid of Korean and Southern white American heritage. Born with all the fiery Korean spices from my mom, I learned quickly to run when she started yelling, "Sarah, aigu chamne, what did you do now?" But yet I knew how to be patient, like my dad. Like a Southern oak is sturdy, I understood what was right and what was wrong, and especially how to hold your tongue. Both taught me to be courageous and shake off the taunts from, "You are not really Asian, Sarah," to, "If you were a Twinkie, you would be a smashed up one." I learned to be like a chameleon, as I would slip into different cultures depending on where I was. I would laugh and talk about the hottest country singers with my white friends, while I would discuss the best K-pop bands with my Korean friends. I thought I could adapt in and out of situations forever, but I was wrong. Growing up, I waned and waxed like the lunar moon. During the day, I was happy-go-lucky Sarah, but at night, I was moody and depressed, waiting for the sun to come up. Finally, in college, it all came tumbling down. No longer the chameleon, I could not hide that I, Sarah Brown, was sick with bipolar illness. I wrote in my journal that year, "Up I fling, down I go, when I would stop, nobody knows." You see, I was tossed into a black hole where I felt there was no out. It did not help that my nightmares and demons became real life as reality began to blur. I struggled every day to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I fought hard, knowing I could lose my life if I let my guard down. Over time, I learned to advocate for myself, knowing that I truly was the hero of my story, and I had a voice. I started to tell my care team what I needed, and I began to climb out of that hole. Many have asked, if you could take a pill to take away your bipolar, would you? I used to say, oh yeah. But then I thought, would I still be as fun-loving if I hadn't experienced mania? Would I still be empathetic if I hadn't experienced the bouts of depression? Would I, Sara Layne Brown, be as strong as I am today if I had not looked the demons in their eyes for 5 years every day saying, you do not scare me? Not today. Because now I stand before you with one word I thought I would never be able to utter. Stability. The sickness was awful, but it made me realize that I did not need to hide who I am or adapt to anyone's expectations of me. I started to love myself for who I am, the girl who's a mix of Korean spice and Southern hospitality, that has conquered mountains, and who has a unique voice. Thank you.
This music video, Take My Hand, combines my songwriting, singing, and collage. And I wrote this song to start to come to terms with my experience of suicidal ideation, particularly during my sophomore year of college. Back then, I basically had no knowledge of what mental illness was, aside from the deep pain of losing a high school classmate to suicide. And I didn't know back then what depression was at all, let alone that Asian Americans could have it, that I could have it, and so I had no idea if it was possible to ever feel better, and that really, really scared me. And I just felt really alone because I knew that suicide would hurt my loved ones really profoundly, but I had no clue if it was possible to ever feel better. So I just had desperate and dark thoughts in my mind, and they terrified me. So I sought help at my college's counseling center because I was just really scared of that part of me that wanted to die. And so I went to counseling in college for several years, and I still am in therapy. And what I did for a long time was work as hard as I could in therapy to get as far as possible from that darkness. But more recently I've realized that this darkness is my pain, and hiding it from myself and the world really just lets it fester. So I'm still on my journey to healing this wound, and by making this music video, I hope to bring some of my difficult experience into the light in an honest and authentic way to melt away some of that darkness and pain within me. And I hope that by compassionately acknowledging that intense pain and fear that came with my suicidal ideation, maybe I can let that hurting part of me know that although it can be so hard to hang on to hope, my efforts to heal aren't in vain. Now I'm surrounded by people in my life who know me and care for me and love me. So my song, Take My Hand, is a reminder to myself and hopefully to all you fellow Asian Americans out there that if you find yourself in darkness and feel alone and scared, remember that there are still stars. These stars can guide you forward, and that daylight will come before long. Hope you enjoy. Take my hand, I'll hold you close.
stay till you can see that you're not alone, my dear. I know you may be afraid. I know you may hide, but I know, though you can't see, that one day stars you'll find. Do you remember when I said we'd never part? Do you remember how it felt at the start? Do you remember when you tried to say goodbye? Do you remember, dear, my promise that night? Take my hand, I'll hold you close till your tears run dry. I will stay till you can see that you're not alone, my dear, 'cause you're not alone, my dear.
I went to my first funeral when I was 7 years old, my maternal grandmother's. I don't remember much of it, but I did know it meant she wouldn't be here anymore. 10 years later, when I was a senior in high school, another death would weigh on me, only this time it felt much heavier. My friend Aubrey was a junior at the time, and we were co-anchors for our high school's morning announcements TV show. We were also both involved in the drama program, and, well, anyone that knew Aubrey would tell you how great of a smile she had and how she was really one of the nicest people you could ever meet. She really was, though. We found out when we all returned from spring break that Aubrey had passed in her sleep, due to a heart condition she was set to have surgery for not soon after. Apparently not soon enough. The drama classroom turned into a hub of hugging, crying, sitting, snuggling, and everything grieving Aubrey's passing. The school even had counselors available for anyone that wanted to speak to one. Hearing this was my invitation to an introduction to mental health. At home that afternoon, I had told my family about Aubrey's passing and how the school provided counselors if anyone wanted to talk to someone. My mother quickly snapped back. Why would anyone want to talk to someone about their problems, let alone a stranger? And that's when I learned my mother's stance on counseling and mental health. Little did she know that I had been keeping a journal for the better part of 10 years, as well as confiding in my friends and a couple of teachers as well. Neither of my parents were open to discussing anything remotely emotional, and the reasoning was simple. If you want to get anywhere in life, you have to work hard, and you have to keep going no matter what. So there would be no time for this grieving or talking aloud nonsense that I spoke of. When I was 24, less than a year after I was medically discharged from the Navy, I started seeing a therapist with the VA to work through the PTSD from an emotionally and physically abusive childhood. More specifically, I saw an intern, and after 2 sessions, they told me they couldn't help me past where I already got myself. So I stopped going. The spring before I turned 30, after 8 years of too many pills on top of glaring alcoholism, I decided to get clean. I took what would be my last dose of Percocet about 2 months before I got my bachelor's degree. When I was 32, I got divorced from my first wife and started seeing a therapist, again through the VA. My alcohol consumption increased yet again, and I rebounded hard. The spring before I turned 35, I received what I like to call a love letter from God in the form of a person that would become my last wife. Not my second wife, my last wife. I smoked my last cigarette the first night we went out, and since then we have been baptized, got married, and had 2 children together. This is not to say poof and happily ever after, not at all. Less than a week after our son was born, which was also a couple weeks into taking a newly prescribed medication that had side effects of thoughts of suicide, I attempted suicide and was consequently hospitalized in a psychiatric unit for a week. There I would receive my diagnosis of bipolar 2 on top of the PTSD and major depressive disorder, and there, once I started learning more about bipolar disorder, things started to make more sense. I mean, things from back in college and high school. Like when I was curled in a ball in the band room at school crying and screaming at people having my first major panic attack. The alignment of meds I was prescribed changed my life, and I was able to focus more on being a husband and a father instead of being something I didn't know how to manage. But a diagnosis isn't the end of a journey. It's the start of a new one. This past July, I experienced a new type of manic episode and was hospitalized again for a medication adjustment. And that's really what I've learned. My journey of recovery and living with mental illness and growing in my faith is all about a series of adjustments. It's about listening and paying attention and asking for help, and listening and asking for help and asking for help. Whether you've been taught to never ask for help or talk about what's weighing on you, ask for help. Talk to others. If you're a military veteran, there are additional resources out there for therapy, many of which are free, like local vet centers. Some of the benefits also extend to your spouse for free as well. Like COVID, mental illness isn't discriminatory. It doesn't care if you're Hmong or Filipino or Swedish, Iraqi, or Egyptian, or old, or young, or trans, or cis, or pan, or what. So know that it's okay to need help. Know that it's more than okay to ask for help. That doesn't make you a failure. It doesn't mean you're shaming yourself or your family. Your story isn't over, and it can get better. Growing up, I had a lot of really motivating, caring teachers. In many ways, like my close friends, they saved my life. My teachers always told me that I could be anything I wanted to be. As I got older, I realized they didn't say I had to pick just one thing. So I became a child of God, a husband, a father, and a storyteller. I'm Marlon Deleon, and this is My Brave.
Hi, my name is Sara, and I'm from Kona, Hawaii. I am Hapa Haole. So Hapa Haole in Hawaii means two things. Hapa is Polynesian or Asian, more local. Haole is Caucasian. So for our purposes, you can think of me as biracial or Japanese and German. I'm a professional comedy and circus performer. I've toured all around the world with my one-woman show called the Flying Hawaiian Show. In that show, I do hula hoop tricks, contortion, I climb my own coconut tree, and I make a bunch of jokes. And I'm really happy to bring my performance skills here to This Is My Brave. I never really had any serious mental health problems or challenges until 2013, because in 2013, I was raped. I had really severe post-traumatic stress disorder. Sometimes I still do. Anyone with PTSD knows that it's not a start to finish process of healing. And with that, my world changed. My life completely flipped upside down. I was constantly anxious, depressed, suicidal. I had to stop my job that I love for about a whole year just to heal and just to survive. And that's a big part of why I'm here as part of this show tonight, because I think in general, we don't talk about mental health enough. We certainly don't talk about sexual assault enough for how frequently it happens. And when I look at my Asian American community, I see that this silence is so much bigger. It's so difficult for so many of us to really just say what's happening, even though all of us, well, not all of us, a lot of us are going through it. So I hope that my presence here tonight and my story helps those out there know that it's okay to talk about your mental health. It's okay to have challenges, and for any survivors watching, that they're not alone. Thanks for being here. She appeared one day completely out of the blue. I was riding along freely, whistling to my own tune. Then just like that, she hopped in my ride. She took over my life in the blink of an eye. Hey, get off. You can't sit here. You're way too heavy. I don't have enough gears. She sat and stared, totally unfazed. And the sun rose and set, and the days began to fade. It's been years now that she's been riding with me, this uninvited passenger who's changed so many of my riding needs. She can't drive, but sometimes she throws a fit and tries, but most days it's fine, as long as I give her a shoulder or an ear or an eye. She is as bright and broken as only a child can be, but somehow this child is always teaching me. I've learned to take detours, read signs, and stock up on snacks. I've learned that when I forget her, I go too fast and crash. She's taught me to listen, to love, to make space. She's taught me that pain has its own power and place. So when we ride along in our bike and sidecar en route to the dreams that feel so far, we'll stop for snacks and a view of the sea. And then she buckles back in, and I think, I'm so glad she's with me.
Filmed on the traditional and ancestral land of the Massachusetts tribe, the original inhabitants of where I am in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Witness, Amy Manion, in spoken word and music. My name's Amy Manion, and this is my brave. You Call Me Corona, September 2020. Traditional Chinese bright red silk jacket. My aunt gave it to me. It may be from one of our ancestors. I walk down the street with it on. I can't hide these eyes, so I wear a token of them on my body, because it doesn't matter what I wear. You think I am Corona. I saw it in the way you looked at me when I was walking down the street. My height from my Irish dad, that can't fool you anymore, make you do a double take, because toneless and light skin equals American to you. And yet another, you cross the street to avoid me and not others up ahead. Imagine me running up after you to call you out on it. It's hard to yell out at racial violence when you're struggling to breathe. But I did it anyway, because you needed to know. Because nothing you can say can change the way you made me feel. And you, yet another, you who chose to single me out in the Harvard Yard on March 13th, 2020, you who looked at me in outrage, awe, and disgust, don't bother. Because I will keep walking down the street in my traditional Chinese bright red silk jacket. My aunt gave it to me. This may be for one of our ancestors. This is dedicated to those in the Asian diaspora who have lost their lives due to suicide. Racism kills. It almost killed me when I tried to take my own life. Translated by Yi Yang Yuan, Shannon Petit Frere. won't take long, won't take long if I just hold on, just hold on. Stay strong, and carry on, I hope I can stick with the plan, a version of me where I'm free to be wild and free, Make the sky concrete, and the concrete the sky. Let a poem fly. Color with feeling on canvas or clay. Can you see? That picture wants to play. Shoes carry soles too, you see. Just ask Baryshnikov. A dancer, a slipper never scoffs. Remedy your maladies with a melody for taste, with the swallows sing in haste. To you a secret garden awaits, its magic is never read too late. To the witness, the artist is much indebted. Between them, a bridge is connected.
Hello everyone, my name is Abby Pasion and I'm a student, writer, performer, and organizer from Portland, Oregon. I identify as first-generation Filipino-American, born on the traditional lands of the Atfalati and Kalapuya people in what is present-day Portland metro area. And I was raised in a multi-generational Filipino immigrant household. And so just from that little intro there, y'all could probably tell I have a lot of intersecting identities and I carry with me a lot of different experiences from my life, which, you know, made an impact on my own personal mental health journey. And so I'm not expecting anyone to, you know, resonate completely with the story I'm going to share, but I'm hoping that just by this mere act of sharing this little sliver of my experience, you know, it will allow someone out there to realize that they aren't alone in their struggle, whatever that may be, and that I can hopefully provide just one perspective on how to heal going forward. So I only have a little bit of time to spend with y'all on this topic, so I'm just gonna give the abridged version of my story and then focus more on what that healing process kind of looked like for me. So the short and quick version, is that I grew up in a very toxic Filipino household environment. I ended up resenting my family, my parents, my culture because of it, you know, growing up. And I developed a lot of anxiety, that hypercriticalness, that self-doubt, a lot of really unhealthy coping mechanisms to deal with it all. And I didn't realize until pretty recently that all stemmed from those experiences that I had with my family growing up. And I came to realize that it's all just this cycle, this big cycle of, you know, elders perpetuating harm, whether knowingly or unknowingly, instilling, you know, this idea that those experiences are not something to be talked about, equating reaching out for help with weakness, and then getting the next generation to internalize all of that, and then the process is repeated. And unless that cycle is interrupted, not just within, you know, like my own family, but within all of our communities, then it's only going to persist. And so how do we interrupt it? Well, there's a lot of ways, but one that I'm going to talk about today is conversation. And no, it's not easy. In fact, it could be very re-traumatizing, you know, having to put your headspace back in that place to tap into those memories, those experiences, especially, if you're confronting the people who hurt you. And just coming from my own experience, I'm still working through it, talking with my family, or just beginning to open up to my family about what I've been dealing with over the years. But whether it's with your family or maybe a friend, a student club, a community event, starting those conversations is how we begin to break down at that stigma of mental health, to shed a light on these taboo topics, taboo because we're not supposed to talk about them, but that's the whole point, is to talk about them, to normalize, mental health issues. It's how we advocate for our communities so that they can get the resources and the support that they not only need but deserve. And that's how we start to build connection, empathy, understanding intergenerationally, so that these harmful cycles do not repeat, for those who come after us, because to the next generation, we owe them at least that much. And lastly, I'll end with this. I just started going to therapy last year at 24. And it's never too late, by the way, to start reaching out and asking for help. And while that has been helpful, and I'm very grateful for my therapist, therapy isn't accessible. And even if it is accessible to you, it may not always be inclusive to all of our identities and our experiences. But folks shouldn't have to feel like unless they have a therapist, then they can't start that healing process. Or that you have to hit rock bottom before you can reach out and ask for help. That just isn't true. Healing can take on many different forms, and there shouldn't have to be some sort of mental health benchmark you feel like you need to meet before you can reach out for help and ask for that support. And for us to break down those misbeliefs, we have to start with talking about it and opening up, being vulnerable. It can be scary, but it is also one of the most powerful and transformative things that you could do. So your mind, our movement, keep the conversation going, and thank you for listening to my story today.
Hey everyone, my name is Rohan Sharma. I'm a proud member of the Asian Pacific Islander and Desi American community, and this is my brave. So growing up, I would say I was a pretty happy kid. I was really carefree, loved expressing myself freely, had no issues with that. I didn't even know the meaning of the word shame, which became such a big part of my life, later on. And let's say things began to change around when I started entering middle school. My mood started becoming very unstable. My eyes would often water for literally no perceivable reason at all, and kids would tease me over this. They would call me things like crybaby. They also made fun of me, for my brown skin, which I was just very, very uncomfortable in. And being that I went to a predominantly white school, I started feeling like there really was something wrong with me. And I started to retreat into myself, and it was about this age, about this time period, my delusions began. So then one day, when I was still in high school, something really exciting happened. A friend of mine had burned me a hip-hop album. It was Gangstar's classic called Moment of Truth, and I went home, listened to it, and basically became hooked. I would go to bed every night listening to a different classic hip-hop album, and basically just became my escape. And even though listening to hip-hop was really therapeutic for me, they were expressing all the things that were going on in my mind, I still never dreamed that one day I'd be making my own music. So fast forward now to about 2011, 2012, I was starting my first year of medical school, and the mask that I'd been wearing for so long began to just unravel really, really quickly. I remember I was skipping my classes because of real paranoid delusions I was having, drinking pretty much every night, substance abuse, things like marijuana, just to ease my racing thoughts. And this time, I spoke up. I went for help to see the school psychiatrist, and I knew that there was something off, but I just couldn't quite figure out what it was. And unfortunately, because I wasn't fully honest with her, she ended up prescribing antidepressants thinking that I was depressed. And I definitely was, but there was also the other side of the coin, which was that I was also very manic. And these antidepressants ended up spiraling me to an even higher manic state until I finally had a full-blown psychotic episode. So one thing that happened during my psychotic episode was that I actually went out and attempted a armed robbery for which I was arrested and ended up serving 23 months in county jail after I pled guilty. And yeah, it was an incredibly difficult and challenging time, but so many positives came from that experience that my life just completely turned around. So one thing I just wanted to mention before I get into my bars is that just how important it is to truly express yourself. For the longest time, I just kept everything bottled up, and it's just really not healthy. And the other, my family very understandably had told me during my whole incarceration period and a little bit before and after, they had told me not to tell anybody and just keep it quiet. And I definitely understand where they're coming from, but since I have been more myself and putting myself out there, I've just received the biggest outpouring of support from the people who I at least expected it from, in the South Asian community. So it just goes to show you that no matter what culture you're from, it's just really important that we keep this narrative going about mental health and why it's so important so that people don't have to, suffer in silence. And now, since, hip-hop truly did save my life, and I feel it is how I express myself best, I thought I would share just a quick 16 bars with you guys. Hope you guys enjoy. Hey everyone, as promised, here's a freestyle that I wrote. It's an old one. It's called my President Carter freestyle. But real quick, I just want to say, please take care of your mental health. Don't keep things bottled up. Find creative ways to express yourself. And on that note, goes like this. Say the good die young, why do greats always die last? Bury me away from all the snakes in the high grass. Still see them coming when I wear my eye mask. Stop their hearts cold, call a triple bypass. You still hiding from the shadows that the sun casts. Remember that the fun lasts only till the gun blasts. Call me a smart ass with a dark past, but the dog with the biggest bite always bark last. You could say I'm from the burbs, but I grew up on State Road, and I'm with my DJ. All he do is break codes. Pretty soon you'll see me on all of the late shows. You'll be in the 8th row while I watch the hate grow. New music dropping soon, I really set the bar high. Tell all the critics that I'm tripping off the far side. Sorry, but before we get back to the show, Black lives still matter. Better act like you know. There it is, guys. Thank you so much for watching. And my name is Rex Mundi, and that was my Brave.
How do you fix a broken mind? When I was 16, my despair tugged at my legs, pulling me under the surface, drowning me as I gasped for air, for a reason to live, for a way out of the abyss. I believed that I was worthless, unworthy of love, so broken that no repair was possible, so broken that I knew my life was not worth living. How do you fix a broken mind? I survived despite my attempt to close the door on this life, survived despite my pain and the constant omnipresent darkness and the sense that death was waiting right around the corner. For years I endured my life of brokenness, endured the suffering of my mind. I want to say when you were born, my darkness vanished, but it did not. At the same time, a shift began. I believe that as your mother, I made a contract with Spirit to not abandon you by my own volition, to not yield to my own desperateness. I was obligated to live, if not for me, then for you. If I were obligated, then healing was the only possible path. Healing is not easy. There's no quick fix. No duct tape to stick the pieces of my mind together. It was more of a decision or an idea that I felt I had no choice but to follow. How do you fix a broken mind? Decide that life is the only possible choice. My story is full of lies. When I was 12, my diagnosis was major depression. At 16, I attempted suicide. At 35, my diagnosis included dissociative disorder not otherwise specified. At 40, I took 19 pills to combat chronic and severe major depression and complex PTSD. Perhaps this is not surprising, since my aunt died by suicide, my uncle faced serious depression, and my mother had bipolar disorder. One could say genetics is a cause of my mental illness. This is a lie. In 1942, my dad and his family were imprisoned in a camp in Topaz, Utah. There's nothing there now but tumbleweeds, hard, dry ground, dust storms, and a plaque with an American flag on it. After camp, when my dad was in high school, a math teacher said he wouldn't amount to anything. My dad earned a PhD in mathematics, but trauma and racism silenced him. He became reclusive. I can only wonder what impact this has had on me. And although I grew up solidly middle class, I also grew up in a white community where I was taunted and called chink and soy sauce. I was bullied in junior high school. My mom was a crazy divorce lady. My sister's friend was forbidden from coming to our house. My mother also told me to not stand with my legs apart. It's not ladylike, she said. But closing my legs didn't stop my cousin from molesting me at 6, or at 16, a supervisor from groping me, not to mention the onslaught of catcalls and innuendos. A normal womanhood, one might say. This, too, is a lie. I grew to hate myself. What was there to love? After all, I was ridiculed for my race and attacked for my gender. When I came out as bisexual, that too was cause for pain. In high school, I hid this from my friends and family. I hid this from the therapist in the hospital they put me in. In my 20s, friends died of AIDS. They said it was our own fault, God's wrath. This too is a lie. No one ever said perhaps your depression and PTSD are normal reactions to racism, sexism, homophobia, and hatred. Perhaps you are not sick. Perhaps your despair is not an illness. Perhaps this is my truth. How I pray. 5 a.m. I struggle to open my eyes, struggle to see into the darkness before dawn. Packing up camp into panniers, I snap the bag shut and quietly leave. The only sound is the crunching of gravel under rolling tires. As the sun peeks out over the horizon, as a rooster crows, as the day spreads out before me, this is how I pray. Noon. The sun beats down on the back of my neck and shoulders. My skin is coffee bean brown, and the heat rises from the hot pavement as I settle into a rhythm. Each pedal reaching its nadir and zenith in turn, revolutions on a long stretch of road, deserted but for the orange cliffs of the Badlands, calling me in their magnificence. This is how I pray. The full moon low in the sky, reminding me of a searchlight's bright beams, reminding me that my soul too searches for meaning and love as it connects to spirit, as it connects to yours. This is how I pray.
I thought there was no way out. Yeah, I used to be scared of the light, and I was swallowed by doubt. I'd forgotten what freedom was like. Puzzle pieces on the floor, they don't fit it anymore. I'm changing, I'm changing. When they ask you who I am, what I've done and where I've been, there's one thing I want you to say. Tell them I'm brave, see it on my face. I am bigger than anything coming my way. It's a new day, now I'm not afraid. So if anyone asks you how I overcame, you can tell them I'm brave. Some days I come out on top, and some days I can't catch a break. But when the fire don't stop,